Hey folks, I'm Tony Norman, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. All right. I feel a little like Rob Rogers up here. For nearly 2 decades, April Ryan has served as White House correspondent and Washington, D.C. bureau chief for American Urban Radio Networks, which reaches millions of African Americans through its 300 affiliated stations. As the only Black female reporter covering urban issues from the White House, she has a unique understanding of the racial sensitivities, issues, and political struggles of our nation's recent presidents. Ms. Ryan's facial expressions during the daily White House briefings regularly offer the most reliable memes regarding the degree of lying the American people must endure in attempting to hold the executive branch accountable. April Ryan was named Journalist of the Year in 2017 by the National Association of Black Journalists. She's also a political analyst for CNN. Many of us had the pleasure of hearing her thoughts on the state of our nation when she was here doing a book tour last year. And I just had the pleasure of listening to April Ryan and Vanessa German just have a passionate discussion backstage. So let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you are in for a treat. So please welcome the great April Ryan.
Wow. The great April Ryan. Wow. I've never been called that, but thank you, Tony. Thank you so much. It is great. It is more than great to be in Steeler country, even though I'm a Raven. Don't be upset. But we've got love here today. We're talking some good stuff, First Amendment. It's great once again to be back in Pittsburgh, and I'm so honored to speak here with you today on issues that are very passionate to us, all of us, I believe, the First Amendment. The First Amendment. The First Amendment. For a time such as this, right? I hear you now. I don't know what to say. I just don't know what to say. Sometimes it's hard, while I'm standing here, I'm trying not to cry. And I'm not crying as an advocate journalist. I'm crying about humanity. First of all, before we even get into that, I want to acknowledge a few people. I have a big connection to Pittsburgh, whether you know it or not. The reason why I've been at the White House for 21 years, I didn't just start 2 years ago when President Trump came in. Been there for 21 years, praying that I'll be there for another 21 more. I don't know, but we'll see. I want to first recognize American Urban Radio Networks and the employees here. Stand up, please. The offices are across the street. Stand up, Jerry Lopes, Jay Williams, and Lenore, yes. These are the great people that I work with daily, and they help me to inform you about what's going on. And Jerry, and before we go any further, I want to thank Jerry Lopes. 21 years ago, he saw a little snotty-nosed kid out of Baltimore and said, she might be good in that job. Little did we know, 21 years later, it would be 4 presidents. 4 presidents for a kid from Baltimore who likes the Ravens and admires the Steelers. Black and yellow, black and yellow. It was a yellow and black. What is it? Black and yellow, black and yellow. Yeah. So, Jerry, thank you. And Jerry is going to be retiring this year, so at the end of the year. And I thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to question and be called by name before American presidents. This one, I don't know exactly what he calls me, but it's okay. But again, for a time such as this, and we're talking First Amendment, I think about the First Amendment like many of you. Oh yeah, it's something that's there that's supposed to protect us, but you don't realize what it really means to you until it's challenged or it's gone. And I'm thinking back to Monday night. Monday was a crazy day. Monday, remember Monday? Remember Monday. Homeland Security Secretary had to dash to the White House from New Orleans to save Sarah Huckabee. I don't know how much saving neither one of them did for each other, but hey, that remains to be seen. But because of that First Amendment that has 45 words in it, and part of it says freedom of the press, I was able to sit in that third row and ask Secretary Nielsen, can you definitively say, because I did a follow-up. Now, if we didn't have a freedom of the press, we wouldn't be able to ask anything. But I said, can you definitively say, yes or no, are these children being used as pawns for a southern border wall? Yeah. She gave an answer. But the press stayed in the room waiting to hear what this White House press secretary had to say, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She was asked again, and she said, it's all about everything. It's all or nothing, basically. Because of the freedom of the press, we even were able to hear the contradiction from the White House about these children who could have been mine or yours, there but for the grace of God go I. Now, I'm going to start this off, and I'm going to say this. I am not an activist journalist, but I'm an activist for truth. I'm not someone who's raising my hand because I am trying to march with you. My march is for you to get information. Senator John McCain said it best. When you suppress the press, there begins a dictatorship. When you suppress the press, there begins a dictatorship. It is important that you understand, no matter the arrows, the warring, how often Sarah says, I'm ridiculous, my questions are ridiculous, and I'm absurd, and you don't know me. It doesn't matter, because it is about the freedoms that our forefathers put in place so that we, the people who are forming a more perfect union, understand what's on the table. I'm going to say that again. It's not about me. It's not about the faces I make. It's not about the questions I ask, but it's about the answers the people of the United States get from the highest office in the land. And if indeed that stops, we the people don't know what's happening anymore. We the people, when we talk about the First Amendment, there's something above the Constitution, right? Something called a preamble, right? Something above the amendments. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union. We're still forming that union. And asking questions is helping. And not just, and part of the equation is not just asking the questions, but it's also marching. What's happening up the street? That's another question that I asked in the White House press briefing room recently. I mean, here in the wonderful state of Pennsylvania, you guys got railroaded for your Eagles down the road. I know you're still a territory, but it's still your state. The Eagles weren't able to fly at the White House. Why? And then they changed the dynamic, changed the narrative. And strategically, Sarah Huckabee Sanders did not want to call on April Ryan because she knew, I understood what the real issue was. The First Amendment, freedom of the press. To ask, does this president realize that taking a knee, does this president realize that taking a knee is not about the military, the flag, or this country, any way of disrespecting that? It is about drawing attention to what? police abuses, police-involved shootings, and what's happening up the street now. What happened here in Pittsburgh, police-involved shootings, that's an issue that has remained on the table. What will this president do? If we are suppressed, you don't know. You don't know what they're thinking. If we don't ask questions, you won't get the answers. Our forefathers, our founding fathers, had wisdom beyond their years and understanding that things were going to change. They understood that. But I'm sure they never imagined that there would be something called the Twitter. You know, I'm sure when they were putting their wigs on and putting those wooden teeth in their mouth, they didn't know that there would be the Facebook or the Snapchat or the Gram, for that matter. Yeah, Instagram, I like it, don't you? Mm-hmm. They wouldn't realize that there would be people up here saying, I look cute, let me take a picture and post it. But they also didn't realize that there would be a president by the name of Donald John Trump who would want to suppress the press. They put forth freedoms that people don't really understand. You know, sometimes I wonder, I'm like, are we a society of people who have not taken U.S. government or civics classes? I mean, I remember my teacher used to, how many of you read the Constitution in class? Thank you. What happened? What's happening? Our kids are like, you're not supposed to ask the president a question. I said, who said that? We are doing a disservice to our children and the next generation if we don't walk around and give them the Constitution and explain to them. We, the people, are allowed to challenge. That is part of the greatness of this country. That's what makes us different from China, which makes us different from Putin's Russia. You know, I think I'm going back to Monday night, after the briefing room, after being on CNN, getting in a fight with that crazy Amy Kramer. Oh, did y'all see that? Ooh. She said, look it up, YouTube it, Google it. They used to call me in Baltimore, April, I ain't lying, Ryan. Google it. She got on the air justifying. Now, Amy Kramer, for those of you who don't know, Amy Kramer is the head of Women for Trump. There's nothing wrong with that, nothing at all. But she's going to get up there and challenge us. And she's going to say, talking about the children who were separated from their parents, she's going to compare it to her leaving her dog when she flew to it. I was like, what? But anyway, moving on, I digress. Whew. So, after I finished that, I moved on over to someone's home because I wanted to hear some poignant words from a reporter who was jailed in Iran. His name is Jason Rezaian. He's an Iranian-American journalist who served as the Tehran bureau chief for the Washington Post. He was convicted of espionage in a closed-door trial in 2015, and he was held there in Tehran. That's not here in the United States. And I said, Jason, I'm going to speak in Pittsburgh today, and I said, I want the people to hear what you have to say, because we're talking about freedom of the press, and for whatever reason, Jason likes me, and I love Jason. He thinks I'm the upholder of the First Amendment. I guess I am to a certain extent. But he said to me, and this is what he gave me for you today. He says, here's what I'd say. The right to express oneself begins to matter to you much more when it's been taken away. I am someone who lived into adulthood and a career in journalism with that right was stripped from me. And then I was given it back. Now I try to honor it by using it as responsibly as possible. You won't find me shooting from the hip. It's much more important to me to be accurate and accurately express my own perspective, experiences, and opinions than ever before. I'm not so sure everyone right now agrees that that attitude is necessary. But in the end, sticking with the truth, even if it's one that others don't want to hear, seems to me like a best practice. Jason Rezaian, specifically for you. He was jailed for reporting the truth in another country. That's in another country. Today, what are we going through in the press? I think about my colleagues. I don't travel much anymore. I'm getting older and I got kids. But when I used to be on the road with presidents, we would go and we would cover the stories. But now many of my colleagues are very afraid or fearful when they go to these rallies because the crowds are ginned up to believe that we are the enemy of the people. I don't care what you say about us. Yeah, you got some good eggs and you definitely got some bad eggs. And I'm going to say this, there's nothing fake right here, okay? But we are at a time when we are called fake. We've had fakies, the fake awards. The press goes to these rallies, and the crowd is spitting and calling us out of our name, and who are we? How did this happen? I think about a couple of months ago, I was at a dinner at the ambassador's house of the European Union, Ambassador O'Sullivan. And there was a conversation on the impact of fake news, the challenge of the First Amendment with a free and independent and fair press. The EU, the European Union, is taking note. It is such a serious issue that they are trying to dampen any effects of what's happening here in the States that could cross the pond to them. They're concerned, and this is real, they're concerned with the fact that once a community of people begin to distrust the press, they distrust government officials, and that could lead to anarchy. This stuff is real, and it has far-reaching implications. It's not just about the United States. This is a global issue. And then when you have the press under attack, oh yeah, you get death threats. Right, Jerry Lopes? Don't we have the FBI on speed dial? It's sad. I raised my hand and asked Sarah a question. I'm called everything but a child of God, the N-word, the C-word, everything. But what did my mother say? It's not what they call you, but what you answer to. She got that from Dr. King. I like that. You've been in church somewhere. She's going, 21 years doing the same job, doing the same thing. And if you don't believe me, Google it. I got into it with Robert Gibbs during the Obama administration. He told me, what did he call it? He said something about, he equated me to his child, but I never got death threats. Because no matter what president is in that office, I'm going to ask questions because the First Amendment covers me. Thank you to our founding fathers for that. Truth always prevails. What's done in the dark comes to the light at some point. And that's what we are, the Fourth Estate. We are part of that accountability piece at the White House to question American presidents. We are the first line of questioning of an American president. During the Clinton years, Mike McCurry was my first White House press secretary. I have a great relationship with all of the press secretaries, except for this administration. I really do. Took a picture with Mike McCarr yesterday. See Ari Fleischer, we hug, and how you doing? See Dana Perino. See Josh Earnest, see all of them. It's a good time. We remember the good days of the friendly adversarial back and forth. But now, the press that they don't like is warred upon. But the First Amendment stands. And while I was preparing just moments before I came out, one of my good Republican sources, I said, I'm going to be in Pittsburgh, and I'm in Pittsburgh, and I said, I want you to give me some information about what the president feels. You've been in his presence, and you talk to the people all the time, and you're in the inner sanctum. Tell me what the president feels about the free press. And this is what my ubiquitously clandestine source told me to tell you. This POTUS believes, and he capitalized POTUS, this POTUS believes that the press has the right to be free so long as they agree with his narrative. This is what this Republican source told me who's in the inner sanctum. For him, freedom of the U.S. press is the freedom he decides. This is why he praises Fox and disparages others. It is scary. The First Amendment is a noun. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Freedom of the press is within these 45 words. I think back to Bill Clinton, second term of the Bill Clinton. Oh, that was a hot time, wasn't it? We had the race initiative going over, talking about the kumbaya moment, we need to all come together. And then there was that other thing. Ooh, that was like 20 years ago. We have come full circle. So I think back at that time. I think how the press used to be able to raise their hands. We used to scream out. I was in that press room with Helen Thomas at that time. Yeah, I miss her, don't you? Sam Donaldson. Oh, he could scream so loud. He taught me how to scream loudly. I watched him. I watched the greats. American Urban Radio Networks afforded me the opportunity to watch the greats, to be great. I saw Bill Plant. And Bill Plant, I saw him at the White House, the most recent White House Correspondent Association dinner. He said, April, he said, you're the last one. I said, what? He said, you're the only one in there asking the questions. And sometimes when you're in the room, you don't really see. When you're in it, you don't really know what's happening until you walk away from it and look at it from the outside. I was in there with some of the greats, and they would scream. We would raise our hands. We acted like unruly first graders that the teacher couldn't calm down. But he would pick us, and he would allow us to follow up. But then during the George W. Bush years, I remember that well, President Bush said, we're not going to have that. We're going to have decorum. So we stopped screaming. I was like, what happened? He moved Helen Thomas back. She lost her front row seat during that time at the press conferences, but not in the briefing. They started changing the press. And then with President Barack Obama, we were so quiet. We were like, and don't you dare scream out at this administration. You'll be chastised. No, you won't be chastised. Well, you'll be chastised publicly. Sarah Huckabee give you that eye and be like, look now. And she does it quite a bit to me, but that's okay. Things have changed. For every bit of access we've gained, it's been pulled back. And now, going back to what my source said, for those who agree with him, that's not a free and independent press that has been put in place by our founding fathers to ask questions, to hold the highest office in the land accountable. I think about, I'm gonna take you with me on this journey for this last 2 years. The First Amendment for the 21st century. Current threats and community responses. I'm gonna take you back to February of last year. You remember that press conference? The presidential press conference, the first and only? Yeah, there was a reason why it was the first and only. President Trump, we were all waiting in anticipation. I mean, we were set. It was like, oh my God, number 45 is going to the podium. He's going to take questions. And I mean, it was like, you know how you get ready for the dance, for some, like a new date. Some of you, I know you might be married for a long time or been with somebody for a long time. Just remember that first date. I know it's old now, but just remember the first date. So anyway, it was like, oh my gosh, it's like we're getting to know you. It's like, it's that dance. It's like, I'm getting to know you, you're getting to know me. We're gonna talk, we're gonna exchange ideas, we're gonna ask questions, you're gonna answer. It wasn't like that at all. It was that first date from hell. Hell! H-E double hockey sticks, all caps. I was like, oh wow. So I'm answering the first few questions. CNN wound up being fake and then very fake. And then the guy before me, I don't know what possessed me to even want to ask a question. The gentleman ahead of me, Orthodox Jewish reporter from New York that he knew, who knew, told him to sit down. I said, oh. And then here I am in my crazy self, starting to rise up. I got out of my seat and raised my hand. And prior to that, he was saying the administration was a well-oiled machine. I was like, okay. But I wanted to be part of the dance. I wanted to be part of the First Amendment. I wanted to get my question in for a community that doesn't always get answers. And he was talking about this on the campaign trail. So I said, okay, let me find out. So I raised my hand. And I said, Mr. President, and he said, oh, this is going to be a bad question. The world is watching. And you're standing there with the new president of the United States of America. And he says, your question's gonna be bad. I'm like, okay, let me compose myself. I said, no, sir, no, it's not gonna be bad. No, it's not. He said, oh, good, because I like watching you on TV. At that time, he acknowledged it, okay? It's on tape, Google it. So, and I said, no, sir. And I'm like trying to get my question in my head, and and he's already thrown me. But I said, Mr. President, you talked about the urban fix while you were on the campaign trail. He said, yes, yes, yes. And I throw in, and he says stuff about it. And then I said, well, what about the CBC and the CHC? You didn't hear the CHC after, because he went in on the CBC. But he said, who? I said, the Congressional Black Caucus. It spiraled downward after that. Oh boy, think about it. You're there to do your job. You are there to get answers for communities that are underserved. And then you become a meme. Then you are now in the history books for this Archie Bunker moment for some, for others a sinister moment, demeaning and marginalizing the press. And not only that, what made it worse, they were my friends. I knew them all. And I was going to get a meeting for them. Didn't happen. I'm a journalist. You can't make this stuff up, can you? This is a reality show, White House. Not with Arnold Schwarzenegger, but with Donald J. Trump. And Omarosa was fired. Moving on. I digress. I don't even know why I brought her up. Oh, gosh. But no. Bye. Anyway. All right. Let's talk about that. You were waiting for that, huh? Let's talk about that. And that's part of the attempts to demean, downgrade, diminish the press, and push us away. They wanted us out of the building. They didn't even want us there. What we yearn for every day is access. Access to find out about the principal, what his thoughts are, what his processes are. Because if you don't know, you won't know. And the prime example, and I hate to keep dwelling on this, but what's happening right now? This issue with this zero tolerance is far from over. He may have signed an executive order, but how are these families going to be reunited? The story continues. And if the press is not asking questions of Nielsen and of the president and of the press secretary, you will not know, and those children will not be reunited. And I'm going to say this to you. Sometimes our questions help change policy and put in front of them things that they wouldn't even think about, and particularly for this administration that really doesn't have a footing yet on understanding governance and government and the world. And you can say I said it, because I did say it. It's true. This administration is still learning its way. It's still learning. Maybe at the expense of some. But there's a price to pay when the press is suppressed. But getting back to that issue, I'm writing a book. Well, the book is written. It comes out in September. It's called Under Fire. And it primarily talks about this, but I detail a lot of what has happened to me. You say, why do you think you're singled out? I have been singled out. I have been singled out. And I'm going to tell you why. You don't want to bring race into it or gender, but I'm going to. I was an easy target, what they thought. I didn't come from ABC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC. I came from a Pittsburgh-based company, network, a black network. Many listeners, but we were smaller than those bigger networks. But we still had our roots in that briefing room. A so-called friend who wanted to show that she was loyal to the administration after turning from Hillary to her friend and Obama to her friend. Wanted to show, oh, I'm loyal. Let me get one of the premier journalists' heads on a platter for you. So-called friend. Lied on me. Tried to disparage my name. Tried to fight me. Just feet away from the Oval Office, screaming loud enough for the president to hear. This is true. Even called my boss that night to tell him to fire me. Correct, Jerry? Nod your head yes. All in an attempt to bring down the press because they didn't want to answer my questions and to show them an example. See, if you come out of line, this is what will happen. But you know what? Truth prevails. I stand on the truth, and I stand on our founding fathers and freedom of the press. If you know what you know, and you've been doing it for all these years, 2 decades, yeah, you were here before. I was there when you were fired, and I was going to be here when you get fired this time, and it happened just as I said. Be careful how you go after someone. Because what did my mother used to say? She said, you dig one ditch, you better dig 2. She got the firing. What did they say? Raj Shah said, oh, she was fired. She was fired from The Apprentice 3 times, and we fired her from here. But the bottom line is, we are in a crazy time where the truth is on the table, but people want to change the narrative. And they want to accuse the press, who tries to unearth the truth to make you think that we are wrong. But when you find out the facts, okay, just this week, oh, we didn't do this, and we can't do an executive order. What happened yesterday? Please tell me. Executive order. And what's happening? You're not going to you're not going to separate the kids anymore. But what happens to those who've already been separated? What happens when they don't want to talk about police-involved shootings and it keeps happening? What happens when the president says, you know, take the heads and push it down into the car? I wouldn't be so easy with that. He said this, it's on tape. But what happens when you have kids from Eric Garner, whose case is still in limbo and should have been solved and found, had some kind of result and end to it by now? What happens? He screamed out 11 times, and you see it on video. I can't breathe. His mother's still looking for justice, but that's a local matter, right? That's what Sarah said. Alton Sterling, the young man that was shot 20 times in his grandmother's yard. Do we just sit there and not ask because that's something that you don't want to deal with? No. When black farmers were discriminated against. I don't know if you know about this story, but when I came to Washington, that was on the table. This guy named John Boyd from Virginia used to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue with his mule struggle. I want my money. I'm like, who would walk down the street with a mule called struggle? It was John. But he kept doing it. And he exposed truth. He kept doing it. It made us say, wait a minute. So this story, if you don't know, there was a group of black farmers that were discriminated against by the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, in loans. They were discriminated against, and the Clinton administration said, okay, let's fix this. And there was a certain other group that didn't know about this payment that they were going to get because they were discriminated against. So the ones who got the payment were told, don't say anything. Yeah, this is true, look it up, Google it. They were like, don't say anything. So you had all these other farmers like, wait a minute, I'm hearing this rumbling that somebody got some money and we were discriminated against. So here goes John with his mule, and then he even brought his John Deere tractor too. Down Pennsylvania Avenue, I'm like, he is crazy, but he wanted to bring attention to this issue, and he caused us to look, to write about it, to talk about it. Once he did that, he kept coming back and coming back. And he brought a bunch of other farmers with him. During that time, Bill Clinton said, okay. We're gonna make restitution here as well. The first group of farmers got their money, the second set didn't. It was gonna take an act of Congress for the second set to get their money. So we're raising our hands in the White House. Mike McCurry, Joe Lockhart, are the black farmers gonna get their money? Continuing to ask those questions. And it moved into the next administration. George W. Bush, Mr. President, are the black farmers gonna get their money? Now, mind you, a president of the United States has acknowledged that they were discriminated against. Their land was lost in some instances. Some of these farmers had died, and now the next generation had to deal with this. We're raising our hand. Freedom of the press. Mr. President, are these farmers going to get their money? Congress was not budging on it. Then came Barack Obama. Mr. President, over 17 years, they were looking for their money. Porter's asking the question. The black farmers ultimately got their money. Congress approved it. But questions help change a dynamic that's sometimes stuck just by asking a question. It's not about being an advocate, but we see what's happening in the community and bring it back to the White House, and the White House responds positively or negatively. But we actually stand on the shoulders of the Founding Fathers, but also help to change policy. When you hear them say that we're no good, challenge that. Because as soon as they start talking about us, they're going to start downplaying anything you do. Freedom of the press is part of that preamble. And part of what is happening down the road at City Hall for that 17-year-old who should be alive today. We, the people, in order to form a more perfect union. This isn't Schoolhouse Rock, but maybe we need some Schoolhouse Rock up in here. We, the people, remember that? In order to form a more perfect, oh, I'm the only one who knows. Okay, I was watching and said, look, I watch TV. I know you did too, but you can Google that too. That's on YouTube. So I've been playing it for my kids. But I'm here to tell you today, April, I ain't lying Ryan, who's going to continue to take the attacks from this administration as long as I sit there and ask the questions that need to be asked. Understanding that the First Amendment is so important. Every amendment is important. You heard from Jason Rezaian. We, the people, are still forming a more perfect union. That forming means we are still asking questions because we are allowed to. We are not Russia, we are not China. We are formulating what the new is in this administration. We're still forming. We're still trying to figure out what perfect and great looks like. I'm not going to say it's great, because I'm saying it's still forming, because that's what my founding fathers said. They never knew that there was going to be a black reporter sitting smack dab in the third row in the middle. Sarah Huckabee cannot miss me, neither could Sean Spicer. That's another one. He's got a book coming out in July. Told me to stop shaking my head. Why? Because I asked about Russia. That was 2 months in, and Russia dominates now. We, the people, who are still forming a more perfect union, those founding fathers, who I'm sure some had slaves, did not realize there would be a black woman in that third row, raising her hand on issues that pertain to Pittsburgh, that pertain to Baltimore, that pertain to Russia, China, and anywhere in between. When you watch the news, watch with a critical eye. When you read the news, I encourage you to watch Fox. Stop. I encourage you to watch Fox. I encourage, but you know what they teach the kids in school? Critical thinking. I encourage you to watch Fox to see what they're saying. I encourage you to watch CNN to see what they're saying. I encourage you to watch all of it. But understand, when you're watching it, use a discerning eye to understand that there's a fine line between opinion and fact now. Because there's a lot of talking heads out there now. Look for the reports prior to the talking heads. Help us out by knowing the issues that are on the table and supporting us. Because when they call us out, you call them and let them know it's not right. We are patriotic. We are not the enemy of the people. I love my job. I love going to that beautiful, over 200-year-old building every day, walking up to that wrought iron fence, understanding that laws and policies and all types of people have come there to make a better way for us. And then here I am coming in asking questions of a president that could help change policy or help your life. We are not there for an agenda. There are some that are there supporting different agendas, but for the most part, we are hardworking people who are trying to give you truth, facts, and an understanding of what's on the table every day in that beautiful, historic building. The First Amendment is our amendment. We stand for something. If we don't stand for something, we'll fall for anything. With that, Pittsburgh, the First Amendment, breathe it, eat it, take it in, bathe in it. Support us. Thank you, and aspire to inspire.